I'm about to hand over to our chair, who's Kripa, who's going to chair things for us, and she's going to be speaking to Al, Liberty and Claire. So if you could join me in giving them a round of applause, we'll welcome our panel.
Thank you so much. This is really strange to get used to, but I see so many familiar faces. You've all probably walked past and heard of our amazing tote bags, because I can see so many of you carrying it as well. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to our speakers as well. I'm going to take just 2 to 3 minutes just to provide some context into this discussion and just a little bit more about who we are and what we do. So I'm Kripa Gurung. I sit in the Bloomberg Connects team. We're part of Bloomberg Philanthropies. And for over the last 2 decades, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear me okay, yeah. For over the last 2 decades, Bloomberg Philanthropies has been supporting the cultural sector with emerging technologies to help enhance the visitor experience. And one of our, I say recent, but we've been around for 5 years now. One of our most kind of biggest passion projects is something called Bloomberg Connects, which is a free arts and culture app. We now have over 400 cultural partners and 3.5 million lifetime users, and we just continue to grow, which is amazing. And we have very recently and very pleased to announce that we've just partnered with Imagineear as well. So I think just before the session, I was out busy handing out these snazzy blue leaflets, which tells you a bit more about partnership. But Imagineear have joined us, and with our mission to expand and enable greater access to the arts and onboard even more cultural institutions, they're there to help the onboarding process and guide all of these partners online too. And so I'm just going to keep it very brief and hand it to our partners and ask a generic question, I suppose, which is, how did Bloomberg Connects fit in the digital strategy and how that experience is going? It's really a chance for you to hear from our cultural partners, two of them who are here today, and existing cultural partners from Museum of the Home and English Heritage. So it's a chance to hear about the experience of coming on board Bloomberg Connects, what the process actually entails, and how they're finding it. So I know there's quite a few people in this room who are interested in joining the Connects community. So at the end, we'll have some time for some Q&As as well. Thank you. So I'm going to hand it over to Al from English Heritage. So Al, with Bloomberg Connects, we've got over, I think, 20 English Heritage sites now on the app. How does this really fit into the wider strategy at English Heritage?
Well, I think obviously because English Heritage is a large organisation, we've got a lot of tentacles to our digital strategy. What I would say is that Bloomberg Connects hasn't directly replaced anything. We see it as very much complementary to what we're doing already. That said, my initial brief as a historian, as a researcher, was to sort of harvest the existing digital material and kind of repackage that, if you like. But because Bloomberg Philanthropies was generous enough to pay for my position, that actually gave us the resource to refresh pretty much everything that's on the website. So a lot of our stuff on our website is quite dry, quite academic, because where we came from as an organization was as the government's advisor on the historic environment. So it was quite sort of dry, I think is probably the best word. But yeah, we've taken a completely refreshing approach to that, really. And I think really we've got a new chief executive now, Nick Merriman, who's come from the Horniman Museum, which is another Bloomberg Connects user. And his focus is very much on reaching new audiences. And I think what Bloomberg Connects has done has given us a real opportunity to reach out to new audiences and make everything we've got on our website at the moment much more accessible. So I think it started off as just a kind of fairly kind of low intensity thing that we were envisaging, but actually it's become a complete refresh. And the audio guides that we're producing now from scratch are for some sites that really ought to have had audio guides for years and haven't done. So places on Hadrian's Wall and so on, which we've now got the opportunity to produce. So it's been a fairly transformative experience, I think. And as you said, we've only got 20 sites on there at the moment, but we'll have doubled that by the end of the year, and hopefully doubled it again by the end of next year. So it's starting to be quite a substantial offering on the app.
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. So Museum of the Home, we really reopened as Museum of the Home in 2021. In 2018, we closed. We were Jeffrey Museum of the Home prior to that, and the Jeffrey Museum prior to that. And what that meant was post-COVID, when we properly had reopened and really saw our audiences begin to grow, our digital strategy also had a chance to redevelop. Around that time, or about 6 months to a year after we had reopened as Museum of the Home, Kripa got in touch with us, and we're very thankful for that, because the opportunity to sort of refresh the experience of visitors on site and really ensure that that was an accessible application or experience was really, really important to us. From a digital strategy point of view, our website is actually currently under development because, again, content can be a little bit dry in the heritage sector. And there was a question of how we bring that up to date with our new vision and mission, which was really moving away from interiors and design and furniture and really shifting towards issues-led programming, having more digital audiences. If any of you have seen our social media, you'll know that in the last year and a half on our TikTok and Instagram, we've really invested in those areas. And it means that audiences, with the impact of COVID, have changed their behaviors. And Bloomberg Connects has really helped us to just keep up with that and connect with them. And particularly, I'll talk more about this later, but internationally, nationally, and locally, we've really been able to engage with them and improve their experience.
If I could just say something else as well, what I should have said before is that our new chief executive's second priority is about getting our collections out into the digital world more. We've got over 1 million artifacts, the vast majority of which are in storage, and some of them are phenomenal things that never see the light of day. And actually, Bloomberg Connects is giving us that impetus and resource to get the best of those items out into the world. I mean, they literally are in boxes, some of them. So getting them out onto the app is a massive step forward.
Thank you. But I think it's really important to also dig a bit deeper into the Bloomberg Connects journey. The process of onboarding and what does that actually entail, and the whole journey of coming on board and being live and on the app and the upkeep. So apart from all of the wonderful things that you guys have been saying, what would you say are some of the biggest obstacles that you're currently facing, perhaps with keeping the guides up to date and refreshed, but also, the biggest obstacles to saying yes and pushing through with this as well? And I think, Claire, to Imagineear's partnership point, this is where, you guys are coming in, but I'd love to hear from you first, Al, in terms of the challenges.
I suppose the first challenge is that English Heritage has over 400 sites around the country. So that's quite a long program of work ahead of us. I mean, the onboarding, to be honest, has been simplicity itself. It's been a joy, and this is the first time I met Kripa in person today, but I feel like she's a close friend already. She's been fantastic to work with, and the stuff we get back from Bloomberg, for example, the proofreading is done in America. And at first I thought, oh goodness, is this going to be a problem in terms of language difference? And actually I found it incredibly helpful, because every so often it does throw up something that you hadn't spotted that wouldn't be entirely clear to a non-native speaker of English. So I've got absolutely, I'm full of enthusiasm for that. And I think Nuala, my colleague who's responsible for the day-to-day interaction with Bloomberg, would say exactly the same. I mean, in terms of challenges, I think there were only, well, perhaps three. The first is that some of our sites are so remote that there isn't mobile phone coverage. Therefore, we have to find ways around that, either by getting people to download the guides in advance, because of course one of the advantages is that once you've got it on your phone, it continues to work even if you run out of mobile reception. So that's really useful in places like, for example, where we've got a foothold in a local museum or whatever. We can put the QR code there and send people onto the site where they're not going to have reception. There are other ways around it. We're, for example, experimenting with pebbles, which is not something I'd heard of before, which are these little devices that amplify the mobile signal or something. Yeah, so there are ways around that. It hasn't been an insurmountable problem so far. I suppose that if there are two sort of social stumbling blocks, one has been that English Heritage works very closely with a fantastic cohort of volunteers. So most of our free sites, for example, are largely looked after by volunteers, and they do a lot of in-person guided tours through the summer. And I think, not unpredictably, we had a little bit of a kind of battle to make them realize that the app is not replacing them or putting them out of a job, that actually it's there are always going to be some people who would prefer to just walk around with an earpiece in. There are always going to be other people who would prefer to have an in-person tour. So I think, you know, we've learned that we have to actually explain very clearly what the app's purpose is or where it sits in our overall strategy. And the same would be true of our guidebooks too, because our guidebooks generate quite a lot of revenue, and they are, I would say, highly academic in some cases. And what we've done is to persuade, well, not to persuade, it's not been a difficult job, but actually there's a very clear difference now between our guidebooks, which are a memento of a day out and which are almost academic textbooks to a degree. They're readable, accessible academic textbooks, I would say, but they are quite a different beast from what we're putting on the app now. What we're putting on the app, I think, is much more likely to appeal to people like my son, who would never touch a guidebook, even if he had an extendable barge pole. Yeah, that's probably all I need to say, isn't it?
For us, we are, I would say, a relatively small organization. And so also within the sector, as I'm sure many of you will have experienced, capacity has always been our biggest challenge. So in our communications team, and therefore those who are sort of onboarded with the app, but aware of how to use a CMS and things like that, there are exactly 2 of us. One of them who was here. So what really has been the biggest, I think, benefit has been that Bloomberg's marketing team, Bloomberg's content team, and everything in between have really filled those gaps for us. So I would say that I've also forgotten the original question, but essentially, I think that that's actually been the biggest thing that I've noticed, in that we were able to go onto the app because we knew we would have that support. That means regular check-ins, that meant timelines, schedules, guidelines, everything that you could possibly want. Bloomberg has already thought of because of their amount of experience. And so I really found that took a massive weight off our shoulders as a very small team, who, you know, we want to grow, obviously. We have our plans, we have our audiences who are getting younger, becoming a lot more diverse. And I think we just wanted to make sure we were keeping up with them. And there's no doubt that this has sort of been a tool that has begun to help that. And we have a lot more that we could do on there. But yeah, I'm not, I guess, complaining about very much, but that's because the experience has been quite positive for us. In terms of the other side of things, so in our internal communications, I'd say the biggest challenge has been onboarding, as Al, you mentioned, sort of visitor experience staff and tour guides. But as yet, I mean, I'm very thankful that there is a tour function, a new function on the Bloomberg Connects app. We haven't used it. And that's because I think there is a huge benefit to arriving at a museum, especially one that has a history like ours does, and having someone who can show you a very specific aspect of our collections and the experience at the museum. So we're excited to look into that. And I think, as Al said, it's not going to take away those jobs, certainly not, because I don't think they're replaceable. But what it will do is support that and actually support audiences who may need a different form of engaging with content and information, or those who, for us, a big part of our audiences strangely come from not the UK. And so that means that they can, they may never step foot in our museum, but it means that they can engage with our content. They can actually, as many have through social media, grown an affection for our museum, and a little fan club almost, I dare to say. But really what it is that they appreciate it because they're able to access that information in a way that works for them and is different and yet kind of similar to the on-site experience.
And Claire, just going back so tying in very nicely back to Imagineear, because Imagineear has worked with both Museum of the Home and English Heritage in terms of, creating content previously, which now has very nicely and seamlessly, coming on to Connects as we emerge, and we've created this partnership. It would be great to hear from you as well, from what we're doing together now.
Absolutely. I mean, these are two fantastic. Oh, a bit closer. Sorry, not very good at this. I should be. Work for an audio company, but anyway. So where you had the privilege of working with both English Heritage and Museum of the Home, produce content for English Heritage and Museum of the Home previously, provide devices, some right for sight, some sites need that. But I think with Al and the team, we're now going through and looking back at possibly 20 years worth of older audio tool content that's been produced and look at it with a fresh pair of eyes to see strategically, can we take elements of those tools, reposition them to match the new stylistic approach that English Heritage is taking, and filter that into the Connects app, and also provide support as you need us to actually help with that onboarding process. And I think Liberty, we'd produced together during COVID some fantastic content, and I encourage you all to listen to it. It's in the Connects app now, which was looking for a new home. Things had changed on site, so actually finding a way that it integrated with your strategy to make sure that that content is being really used as much as possible. The investment had made before, so let's see how we can use it to reach new audiences. As part of the onboarding process, which I think is fantastic for people who are thinking to sign up, it's really robust, it's really supportive. You get the training that you need, not the training that you don't need. If you're fully happy with building those content strategies, obviously you don't need those services, but everything from how to use the CMS, how to market it to your audience, how to do your promotional material, how to do some of that internal communication, which is fantastic to learn the different. We need the staff, we need the team to buy in to help maximize people getting the most out of every feature in the app. So that's part of what Imagineear does. And audio is at our core. So it's fantastic to be exploring that with the wider Bloomberg Connect community. Okay.
So one of the app's main objectives is to expand access and engage with wider audiences across the arts and culture sector, but beyond as well. And so we are a truly global app. I mentioned that we have over 400 cultural partners. That is from everywhere in India to the US to now Japan as well. And Liberty, you touched on this quite just very briefly earlier on in terms of the international scope and the ambitions that you have at Museum of the Home, and Al as well at English Heritage, because this is very much it can be experienced as an on-site tool to enhance, but also it is an off-site experience as well. In what ways do you think it's not only benefited but also challenged the ways and how you're engaging with your visitor and what kind of visitor you're aiming for now?
Yeah, I think we are hoping that a lot of people will, discover English Heritage through that well-established international audience you've got already. Just in terms of, I think it's absolutely amazing that it translates into 40 different languages. So that gives us worldwide reach immediately. In terms of the material we're presenting as well, I think we're starting to think more about how we communicate with non-British visitors. So a lot of the stuff that's on our existing website, you have to have a pretty good grounding in British history to make sense of some of it. So actually, that was part of the refresh process. I think what hasn't been mentioned as well is all the sort of collateral that comes with the app. So all the Bloomberg is providing all the sort of QR code stuff, the postcards and things to advertise it. So there's a lot of stuff that would have been quite costly for English Heritage to produce, which Bloomberg has shouldered the costs of. So that's really useful as well. But I think that the fact that, as you say, we get large numbers of visitors from the US, we get large numbers of visitors from China as well. And the fact that the app will automatically translate the content into both those languages without us doing anything about it whatsoever, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I would I guess I just reiterate that. I think it's been great to be able to translate the guide into a number of languages. A big part of that for us was how we could engage or continue to engage digitally our local community. We have an East and Southeast Asian program that's run by two fantastic producers at the museum, but that also meant that a lot of the intergenerational communications we wanted to sort of share meant that there were individuals in our communities who only spoke Cantonese or Vietnamese. So it's been really helpful to just be able to signpost to that if they wanted to experience the museum. But we also notice through the wonderful metrics that we get whenever we want, actually, that there are always going to be international visitors, and there are many of them who will come to the museum to see our beautiful gardens, but a lot of it also means that they can't necessarily engage with the signage or the context, especially with the cultural context to British history and the home. So being able to translate that into German and French and Italian and, but also, targeting our South Asian audiences and our East Asian audiences, I think it's just been really positive for them to feel included when they come to the museum, to feel like it's not just us telling them what to think and really just inviting them in, and that digital side of opening ourselves up as a museum, but also a free space to visit, a community space, was part of our core mission and vision when we reopened, and this has really just helped us to continue to do that.
And I think what goes hand in hand with the multilingual capability that we offer within the app is also accessibility. So for us, that's incredibly important. We have what I would say a membership with a software called rev.com, which all of our partners who, those who do not have the resource in-house to provide transcripts or subtitles for videos or audio pieces, we offer this service, which all of our partners, greatly benefit from, for not only content that's sitting on the Bloomberg Connects app, but also anywhere on the other digital platforms as well. It's something that's, even when we built this app, it was really just integrated, this idea of this app being for everyone and anyone to use. And yeah, that's something I know in both English Heritage and Museum of the Home have taken advantage of with their audio tours as well. And although the multilingual capability may not be able to translate the content itself, the audio piece, as long as you've got the transcript, it's still accessible to those users who may not have English as their native language. I also just wanted to, I think with coming onto Bloomberg Connects, it's opened a lot of opportunities for both of your institutions, and I think it's opened up also ambitions as well as to what you want this app to do for you, but also how you engage with your visitor. And I guess it's more of an open question, really. So, from the app and its learnings as well, because you get all the data information as to seeing how many people have scanned the QR codes, how many people are engaging with which audio piece, and what the completion rate is for each. How has that kind of shaped and informed your strategy for digital content going forwards as well? Has it set bigger expectations, bigger ambitions? Has it asked you to kind of questioned you to pull back a little bit? I'd be interested to know.
Shall I start? Yeah, I think probably for a few years within English Heritage, there was some sort of wariness as to whether QR codes were going to be, another digital flash in the pan that was going to be. But I think, one of the side effects of the pandemic actually is that it's now quite clear that QR codes are the way forward. So I think we're going to be increasingly kind of relying on the app actually as time goes forward. I mean, for me, the big advantage of it is the sheer flexibility it allows. So we don't just have to include material that appeals to one audience. So I think we're within particularly with the partnership with Imagineear, who are really plugging that hole of our engagement with the younger audiences, as initially at least. We could be in a position within a few years where you've got 6 people all on their own phones looking at the same thing, but having their own different experiences. So that sheer flexibility of what we put out there what's available through the app, I think, is fantastic. Really, it's going to be, people are going to be able to pick and choose what they want, which is, well, the definition of accessibility, really, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, I would just add to that to say that when we think about our audiences, we still have our I suppose, previous audiences who are more who you expect to visit museums and heritage sites, and that younger audience and that more diverse audience as well has started to really grow. I think a big part of that is COVID. I think the way people interact with digital content has changed and will continue to change. I think the role of social media and what video content plays in that has massively changed what people expect from us as an organization. And so I see Bloomberg Connects as one part of that strategy and that net that we're creating to capture all sorts of different audiences and meeting them where they want to be met. So audio on that side was such a big benefit for us to have Imagineear partner with Bloomberg, because it meant that the content that had been invested in 2021 could come back, and the people who expect an audio tour when they go to any museum or heritage site, we've been able to give them that completely for free as well, which is fantastic. But the people who only want to interact with us on social media and never have a plan to step foot in our organization, in our museum, is also, they also, like I said, have a relationship with us. And so, yeah, it's been, I think, it's a challenge to also try and meet everybody's needs. But I think that the aim is sort of breadth of forms of content, so audio, video, everything that Bloomberg Connects can provide and host for us, but also not forgetting our other channels and platforms.
And then Claire, just going back to Imagineear, because obviously with the onboarding stage, which is essentially the building blocks, it's the crucial stage where the guide comes together. With the onboarding by week process, Imagineear, with your wealth of experience that you're bringing, you can actually help the content strategy side of things and shape what these institutions are putting on their guide and know exactly how to get the most of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of different things that go into onboarding. So things could be practical training on how to use an audio kit to record your own audio. So you're actually creating new, fresh content on the fly, continually generating more things. We can help you then turn that into something that might be a tour or might be an exhibition-led experience. It's been interesting. I've been on some other groups within the Bloomberg partnership groups on how other people are using aspects of the app. So possibly communicating key bits of content that you might want a school's audience to know. So engaging, thinking about it as a platform for lots of different audiences that can literally connect seamlessly on their phone, get the information, plan what they need to do, plan their visit as well. I think also as part of the onboarding process, it's advising people on how to make the most of what you've already got. You might have done a little podcast series or a series of off-the-cuff video interviews, or you might have stuff on your social media channel that can actually be repurposed, repackaged to create a really solid experience on site for a general visitor coming in. So part of that onboarding process is really going through honing a strategy, but a real key part is get you up and running as soon as possible so you can then really explore the possibilities, try different things out, try things with different audiences, get feedback, and use this as an ongoing communication channel with your audience. And if anybody has any questions about onboarding, we're here. So we'd be delighted to answer any as we go through.
Yeah, I think we've just got under 10 minutes left. And before we open it up to the floor for Q&A, Al and Liberty, I think I just want to ask you, and by the way, I have not staged any of this. All the wonderful things that are coming out is truly from working with such wonderful partners. But apart from the community that we have at Bloomberg Connects with all of these partners, what would you say personally has been really eye-opening for you, and a personal takeaway from creating these digital guides and working on it as well?
My job title is historian, but I'm actually a landscape archaeologist. And what really excites me about the app is that for the first time ever, we can tailor guided tours to whole landscapes. So I mean, it's quite straightforward making your way through a museum or through a series of rooms in one of our big houses like Audley End or Kenwood or Apsley. If you're in the middle of nowhere and you've got to guide people around a landscape that's maybe got slight humps and bumps or particular trees you want them to look at, and all sorts of things out there that aren't obvious to people. For the first time, that the georeferencing facility is going to make it possible for us to basically allow people to put together their own guided tours. So we do a series of stops around the landscape, but people can then visit them or not in the order they want to. So for me, because of my specialism, that is just really exciting.
Answer. There are a lot of things, but I think the one that's top of mind right now is for the first time we're putting exclusive content on Bloomberg for new galleries that we have opening this summer. And I think the fact that I get to use that as almost a starting point to onboard our curatorial teams, our learning teams, to really show them what is possible to improve the experience of their audiences in the physical gallery space, and really pinpointing the stories of objects that we have in our period rooms, things that have been collected and co-curated with the communities that they're representing. The fact that we get to work on that together and use different mediums, I think, is really exciting. So things like never before, or it would have been a lot harder to put oral histories that have been collected as part of this project into the rooms. It's extremely simple now. We know where it's going to go. We know how much time it's going to take for us to get those on there. And really, it means that we get to amplify or continue to amplify the work that our curatorial teams are doing. And it just makes it so much easier, honestly. So that's something that I'm really excited about. And it means that, more people get to experience, have a much richer experience in our galleries if they get the app. But if they don't, that they're still going to be able to engage with what our teams have worked so hard on. And that comes back to tours and the fact that there's only so much that only tech can do. I think that's just a completely different experience. So for them to work together for the first time for us in such a deep and multimedia way is really exciting.
I should have said too, I'm also really excited to be working with Imagineear, because that's going to address a sector that I have no expertise in whatsoever, whereas you do. So I think that's going to be a really profitable partnership for the next.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Al, Liberty, and Claire for joining us today. We're over at is it J5 and J6 where we are? J6, yeah. So we're over there. So please come by and say hi and ask us any questions that you may have. But if not, I guess we'll open the floor to questions here. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. That was really interesting. My question was about uptake of the app when people are on site. Have you got any data around the percentages of people who are doing that?
Yeah, so we have reports that you can pull from the back end, which is our content management system. So all of our partners have access to this. So you can see actually how many people have downloaded the guide, how many people have engaged with which content pieces. This can be custom reports, so you can do it from a weekly basis, from a monthly basis, but all of this information is available on the back end. In terms of uptake as well, so we provide QR codes, which is usually how we promote the digital guide on site. And this can be through signage on site, but also through newsletters and things like that. But we can provide tracked reports on those QR codes, which are tracked, into exactly how many people are downloading or finding your guide via those ways as well.
That's great. Could you give us a kind of an example of how many people are using it at the moment?
I haven't got the exact figures. I would say at the moment for the English heritage sites, it's at the level of a steady trickle at the moment, because we actually haven't done any marketing yet, because we took the view that trying to market 6 sites, which was the first tranche we did, I think, was going to be a lot more difficult than actually when we've got 50 or 60 sites on there, then it's much more of a substantial offering. So I think by sort of the autumn, we'll have enough that we can start really letting people know about it. And, we've got a big membership in the organization. So they're our go-to. But then, through all the normal media channels, I think at that point, things, I suspect, will take off in earnest. But at the moment, it's just people almost stumbling across it. But that's fine.
And at the moment, at some of the English heritage sites as well, we've produced and designed postcards with little QR codes. At Tintagel, I believe there are postcards in place, which if you scan, it will take people directly to the digital guide. And these are free takeaway materials that people can expect on their visit there.
Any others? There we are.
So sort of tying on with the previous question, you sort of mentioned about the English heritage sites, some customer basically stumbling across them. Have either of you two had any, or I should say we've just launched as a partner a few months ago, so that's where I'm speaking from on this. Have you guys had any particular success stories of how to encourage visitors to stumble upon those, basically connect from seeing the poster and saying, oh yeah, that's interesting, to let's download it. I have to download this.
Yeah, I think one of the lessons was that by working with our volunteers more closely, the people who are there day to day, and indeed all the site staff and so on, that actually early engagement with them, enthusing them about it, has been an important thing, because they are the ones who then sell it and or mention it to visitors routinely. A lot of our free sites, which I think is where we see almost the biggest bang for the buck kind of thing, because at the moment there's minimal interpretation on those sites. Obviously there's no one there to do the selling, so we're reliant on a QR code on site for that. But already we are starting to see people look at some of those remote sites that really wouldn't have had a clue that people were interested in them under the current system, or the previous system rather.
Yeah, for us, I would say that a big part of the work that we did when we first started was the marketing with Bloomberg Connects. So that includes collateral, but it also includes our own social media posts. I think that helped to give us a sort of peak and awareness, but I do think also that it is about onboarding the staff who are actually face to face with visitors. That's probably the biggest part to invest in, and I think that personally we could invest more in that, and we intend to with the new galleries opening. But it also includes being very clear for all ages, how to download the application. Some of the questions and the Q&As that we give, a briefing that we give to our staff, refers to how big is the application? Is it going to take space on my phone? Is my data safe? So I think being able to answer all those questions is really important as well. For us, we're also just upping our signage training and also our online communications around that. But I would actually say, and I think Bloomberg Connects does recommend this, that to do it around a specific exhibition or temporary exhibition that you have on is really helpful, because it gives people a very clear call to action. I think for us, we are mostly program and events led actually, and so it's sort of an ongoing trickle, as you said, because we're only really trying to capture people with our evergreen content. That's why this new project is really exciting, because it means that they're going to only be able to access some of the information through that app, and I think making sure you know your selling points there is really important.
Brilliant. Thanks so much to Kripa, Al, Liberty and Claire. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but hopefully you'll be able to pop to the stand. Do you want to give everyone a quick reminder where that was, Kripa?
We're J5. Yeah, J5 in the middle.
Lovely. So you can ask all the questions you want over there. Thanks so much for joining us. If you could give the panel a lovely round of applause to thank them for their time. Just a little reminder, if you have got the headset, if you could just leave the receiver on the seat, that would be really helpful.